Title: The Heart of the Harvest. Manuel, an old, poor man, walks into a luxurious restaurant with his hungry granddaughter, begging for a simple piece of bread. However, the owner, Don Javier, cruelly accuses him of theft in an act that could destroy his dignity. But what happens next when a waitress decides to take action will leave everyone speechless. Watch until the end, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications now to be the first to see the conclusion of this story and follow the upcoming ones, which promise to be even more emotional and full of surprises. The torrential rain pounds against the windows of the luxurious restaurant, El Paraíso, where the aroma of fine dishes and the murmur of elegant conversations fill the air. It's a night like any other for the regular patrons until the door swings open abruptly, drawing all eyes to the entrance. A thin, exhausted man, Manuel, stumbles in holding his granddaughter, Lucia, a little girl with disheveled hair and wide, frightened eyes. His feet leave wet footprints on the polished floor, and his tattered, soaked clothes stand out against the opulent surroundings. "Please," Manuel's voice comes out almost as a whisper, laden with desperation. He approaches the counter where Don Javier watches with a growing look of disapproval. "My granddaughter, she needs to eat, anything, a soup, a piece of bread." Don Javier raises an eyebrow and crosses his arms. "This is not the kind of place where you give out charity," he responds coldly. The room falls into an uncomfortable silence, the patrons watching the scene with a mix of curiosity and unease. "We're not asking for charity," Manuel says, his voice trembling. "I'll pay as soon as I can, but she needs food now." Don Javier leans slightly forward, his eyes narrowed. "And how can I know you're not here to deceive us all? Look at you, dressed in rags. You should have thought about that before coming in here." Lucia, clinging to Manuel's wet coat, begins to sob quietly, the sound of her distress echoing through the room, heightening the tension in the air. Some patrons avert their gaze, unable to bear the scene, while others watch with a shadow of compassion. "Please, sir," Manuel insists, kneeling on the floor. "I'll do anything to pay for a meal. Don't turn us away. She's all I have." Don Javier takes a step back, clearly uncomfortable with the public plea. "You don't belong here," he says finally, in a cutting tone. "Leave before I call security." Manuel remains kneeling for a few seconds, feeling the cold of the floor seeping into his bones as desperation takes hold. Lucia, still shivering, clings tighter to her grandfather as if finding some comfort in that embrace. The restaurant, once filled with voices and laughter, is now enveloped in tense silence, only interrupted by the muffled sound of the rain outside. Don Javier, standing behind the counter, watches the scene with an unfeeling gaze. To him, Manuel and Lucia are a blemish on his perfect establishment, an uncomfortable reminder of the harsh reality he prefers to ignore. He clears his throat, trying to dispel the strange feeling of discomfort growing inside him. "I've already said," Don Javier repeats more firmly this time. "Leave my restaurant. This is no place for people like you." Manuel stands up slowly, helping Lucia to her feet. His face is pale, his expression dejected. He knows further insistence would be futile, but the hunger in his granddaughter's eyes is something he can't ignore. "Please, sir," Manuel tries again, but his voice is cut off by Don Javier. "That's enough," Don Javier exclaims, his patience wearing thin. He points firmly to the door. "If you don't leave now, I'll make sure you're removed myself." At that moment, Lucia starts crying. Tears stream down her dirty little face as her small shoulders shake with cold and fear. The sound of her crying fills the room, stirring murmurs among the patrons. Some look away, others exchange sympathetic glances, but no one moves to help. One of the patrons, a middle-aged man, whispers to his wife beside him, "Of course, he's trying to deceive us. He'll probably spend the money on something improper." Don Javier hears the comment and nods slightly as if confirming his own decision. However, before he can say anything more, a soft but determined voice rises from the middle of the room. Enough. The voice comes from a young waitress, Elena, who has been watching the scene with a mixture of concern and empathy. "This isn't right." Don Javier looks at Elena with surprise and irritation. "Elena, this isn't your business. Go back to the kitchen and continue with your work." "No, sir," Elena responds firmly, taking a step forward. "I can't just stand by and watch this." They are clearly desperate, and the girl, she looks at Lucia, her heart aching, she needs help. Don Javier opens his mouth to protest, but the words seem to fail him. He isn't used to being challenged by his staff, especially not by a young woman like Elena. The silence in the restaurant grows even heavier as everyone awaits Don Javier's response. Elena seizes the moment of hesitation. "They're not asking for charity, just a chance. Let me handle this, please." Manuel looks at Elena with gratitude, a glimmer of hope lighting up his eyes. Don Javier hesitates for a few more seconds, his eyes narrowing in frustration. "Do what you want," he says finally, turning with an impatient gesture, "but don't think this will change anything." Elena leads Lucia and Manuel to a table in the corner of the restaurant, away from the more critical gazes of the other patrons. Little Lucia is still sobbing softly, her big brown eyes shining with tears as she clings to Elena's hand as if the young waitress were the only thing keeping her upright. "Sit here," Elena says gently, helping Lucia settle into a chair. "I'll get something for you to eat." Manuel can barely utter the words of thanks that bubble up in his throat. He is exhausted, both physically and emotionally, but Elena's simple kindness seems to bring a lightness to his heart that he hasn't felt in a long time. "I don't know how to thank you," Manuel murmurs, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to do this." Elena smiles at him, a smile that offers more comfort than any words could. "We all need a helping hand sometimes. Wait here. I'll be right back." She quickly goes to the kitchen while Manuel looks around, still feeling the heavy stares on him. The atmosphere in the restaurant is one of tension mixed with curiosity. Many patrons whisper among themselves, unsure whether to feel pity or contempt for the man and his granddaughter. In the kitchen, Elena asks the chef to prepare a bowl of hot soup and a piece of bread. As she waits, her thoughts return to the scene she just witnessed. She knows she's risking her job by defying Don Javier, but she also knows she couldn't stand by. The image of little Lucia crying, hungry, and helpless, is stronger than any fear of repercussions. When the soup is ready, Elena hurries back to the table where Manuel and Lucia are. As she approaches, she sees that Lucia has already fallen asleep, her head resting on the table, too exhausted to wait for the food. "Here it is," Elena says softly, placing the bowl and bread in front of Manuel. "Let her sleep for a bit, the food will be here when she wakes up." Manuel looks at the food, and tears form in his eyes. I don't know how to repay you, he says, his voice choked with emotion. You've given us more than food, you've given us hope. Elena sits down across from him with a compassionate look. Sometimes all we need is a small act of kindness to remind us that we're not alone, she replies. Tell me what happened. Maybe I can help in some other way. Manuel takes a deep breath, holding Lucia's small hand as he begins to speak. He tells her about losing his job, how life had become a constant struggle to find shelter and food, and how Lucia was the only thing keeping him going. Elena listens intently, her heart aching with each word. We're not beggars, Manuel says, trying to hold back tears. We just want a chance to start over. Elena feels a determination growing inside her. You'll get that chance, she promises. I'll do what I can to help. The conversation is interrupted by a sound coming from the kitchen door. Don Javier appears, his expression stern, watching Elena and Manuel. He doesn't say anything, but the tension is palpable. Elena knows she will have to face the consequences of her actions, but she's ready for it. She's just a child, Elena thinks, looking at Lucia. I can't let the world take away the little she had. As Manuel holds Elena's hand tightly, a silent gesture of gratitude, he whispers again, "Thank you," his voice broken by emotion. Elena stands up slowly, still feeling the weight of Don Javier's stern gaze on her. She knows her actions won't go without consequences, but something inside her refuses to give in to the pressure. Lucia is still sleeping, her small hand clutching Manuel's coat, which he is now trying to compose himself after opening up about their struggles. Manuel, Elena begins, her voice soft but firm, I'm going to try to talk to Don Javier. Maybe we can find a solution to help you and Lucia. Manuel nods, clearly exhausted but still holding on to a thread of hope. Thank you, Elena. You've done so much for us. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Elena smiles, trying to offer some comfort. Don't worry about that right now. The only thing that matters is that Lucia is safe and well fed. I'll be back soon. She heads to the kitchen where Don Javier is already waiting with his arms crossed and a stern expression. Elena knows she needs to choose her words carefully. Sir, she begins, keeping a respectful tone, I know what I did was against your orders, but I couldn't ignore the situation that little girl is in. They are desperate and need help. We can't just throw them out into the rain with nothing. Don Javier sighs, running a hand through his gray hair. You don't understand, Elena. This is a respectable restaurant frequented by high-level people. If we start helping everyone who comes in asking for handouts, we'll lose our customers. We can't risk that. Elena stands her ground, looking him directly in the eyes. I understand your concerns, but I believe there's another solution. What if we give Manuel a chance to work here? He could help in the kitchen, clean, do anything in exchange. They could get food and a place to stay until they get back on their feet. It wouldn't be charity but a fair exchange. Don Javier hesitates, clearly surprised by the suggestion. He looks at Elena, then at the kitchen door where Manuel and Lucia are. What if he's unreliable? What if this ends up hurting our business? Elena takes a deep breath, knowing this is her chance to convince Don Javier. I believe everyone deserves a second chance, sir, and honestly, I don't think they're lying. The little girl, Lucia, she can barely stand. If there's something we can do, we should at least try. If it doesn't work out, I'll take responsibility. Don Javier ponders for a few moments, his face showing signs of internal conflict. He has always been a businessman focused on maintaining the order and success of his restaurant, but there is something in Elena's sincerity that makes him reconsider. "All right," he finally says, his tone less rigid, "we'll give it a try. If Manuel is willing to work hard, maybe we can come to an agreement. But, Elena, remember, any problems this causes will fall on you." Elena feels a wave of relief but also of responsibility. "Thank you, sir. You won't regret it." She quickly returns to the table where Manuel and Lucia are. Manuel looks up, anxious for any news. "What did he say?" "I managed to convince Don Javier to give you a chance," Elena says with a smile. "You can start working here, and in exchange, you'll get food and a place to stay, but it will be just a trial, so you'll need to do your best." Manuel is silent for a moment, taking in what he has just heard. Tears of gratitude fill his eyes once more. "I don't know how to thank you, Elena. I'll do my best not to disappoint you." Elena pats Manuel's shoulder reassuringly. "I'm sure everything will work out. Now, rest a bit and take care of Lucia, tomorrow will be a new day." Manuel nods, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders for the first time in a long time. He feels that things might really get better. He looks at Lucia, who is still sleeping soundly, and whispers softly, "We'll be okay, my dear. We'll be okay." The sun rises timidly on the horizon, casting a soft golden light on the El Paraíso restaurant. Manuel and Lucia are sitting at a corner table, enjoying a simple breakfast that feels like a feast after so many days of hunger. Lucia is still a bit sleepy, but the smile on her face brings warmth to Manuel's heart that he hasn't felt in a long time. Elena watches the scene from a distance, feeling a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. She knows this is just the first step, and the real challenge will begin once Manuel starts working. Don Javier, on the other hand, remains distant, observing everything with a critical eye. The restaurant begins to fill with regular customers, and the pace of the place quickly returns to normal. Elena approaches Manuel with an encouraging expression. "Ready to start?" she asks, trying to hide her own concern. Manuel nods, rising with determination. "I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes." She leads him to the kitchen where Don Javier is already waiting. The owner gives Manuel a stern look, sizing him up from head to toe. "All right," he says in a voice that leaves no room for doubt, "you'll start by cleaning the tables and then move to the kitchen. I want to see dedication and effort, or this will be your first and last chance." Manuel nods vigorously. "You can count on me, sir. I'll do my best." The work begins immediately. Manuel throws himself into the tasks with a determination that even surprises Elena. He cleans the tables meticulously, handles the dishes in the kitchen, and attends to any request that comes up, all while keeping an eye on Lucia, who plays quietly in a safe corner of the restaurant, supervised by Elena. But not everyone in the restaurant is as accepting of Manuel. Some customers start murmuring among themselves, questioning the presence of the man and the girl. "He's just taking advantage of Elena's kindness," one customer whispers to his wife. "Who knows how long he'll last here?" Elena overhears some of these comments and realizes that the judgment from others is beginning to affect Manuel. He keeps his head down, focusing on his work, but it's clear that the stares and whispers are weighing on him. The tension in the air is palpable, and Don Javier notices the shift in mood in the restaurant. As the morning progresses, Don Javier decides it's time to address the situation. He approaches Manuel, who is cleaning one of the last tables after lunch. "Manuel," he says, his voice firm but not without a note of curiosity, "it seems like you're putting in the effort, but some of our customers aren't very pleased with your presence here. We need to address this." Manuel stops what he's doing, feeling a chill run down his spine. He knew this moment would come, but he hoped for more time to prove his worth. "Sir, I just want a chance to show that I can be useful. I don't want to be a burden to anyone." Don Javier looks at him with an inscrutable expression, but before he can respond, Elena intervenes. "Sir," she says, standing next to Manuel, "I understand the customer's concerns, but maybe we can find a way to show everyone that Manuel is willing to work hard for what he's received. Perhaps if he could help in a more visible way, the customers would see that he's here to contribute." Don Javier considers the suggestion for a moment, his expression showing that he's seriously considering the proposal. Maybe if Manuel can clearly demonstrate his dedication, it might calm the discontent, but it will depend on him. Manuel feels a wave of relief and determination rise within him. "I'll do whatever it takes, sir. Just tell me what needs to be done." Don Javier nods slightly, softened. "Let's start with that, then. Elena, you'll help him learn the more visible tasks. Let's see if he can convince the others with his work." Elena smiles at Manuel, a smile full of encouragement. "We'll do this together," she says, and Manuel feels that for the first time, he's beginning to find his place in the restaurant. As they move to start the new plan, Don Javier watches from a distance, still doubtful but with a small hope that maybe, just maybe, this act of kindness could turn the situation around. As Manuel and Elena work together to implement the new plan, the atmosphere in the restaurant begins to change gradually. Manuel takes on more visible tasks like serving customers, cleaning tables efficiently, and even helping with the preparation of simpler dishes. With each gesture, he makes sure to show his gratitude and dedication, a genuine effort to prove that he's there to contribute, not just to receive. Lucia, in turn, becomes a charming presence in the restaurant. The girl, now with a slightly rosier face thanks to regular meals, plays quietly in a corner, drawing on sheets of paper that Elena gives her. Her laughter, though shy, begins to be heard again, bringing a touch of joy to the environment. However, there are still customers who look at Manuel with suspicion. The murmurs about his presence have not completely ceased, and this does not go unnoticed by Don Javier. He watches from a distance, seeing some patrons narrowing their eyes as they whisper among themselves. One day, while Manuel is cleaning a table near the entrance, an elderly woman enters the restaurant. Her walk is slow, supported by a cane, and her eyes wander around the room as if searching for something. Manuel immediately approaches her, extending his hand to help her sit down. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asks, his voice full of respect. The elderly woman looks at him for a moment, her eyes examining him almost maternally. "Yes, young man. I just need a place to rest a bit. The streets are so busy today." Manuel guides her to a table by the window, pulling out the chair so she can sit comfortably. "I'll bring you a glass of water," he says before moving towards the kitchen. While Manuel is in the kitchen, the elderly woman watches Lucia in the corner, her curiosity evident. When Manuel returns with the water, she asks gently, "Is that little girl your daughter?" Manuel smiles slightly, placing the glass of water in front of her. "No, ma'am, she's my granddaughter, Lucia. We're going through a tough time, but Don Javier gave us a chance here." The elderly woman nods, seeming to ponder his words. She takes a sip of water and, after a moment of silence, says, "You know, young man, kindness is a rare currency, but when you spread it, it tends to return multiplied. I'd love to know what you think of the story so far. If it's touching you, leave a like and comment on what impressed you the most and where you're watching from." Before Manuel can respond, she stands up with some difficulty and goes to Don Javier, who is at the counter. "Sir," she says, her voice gentle but filled with determination, "I'd like to pay for this young lady's meal today, and also, I'd like to give her a toy. I have one in the car that I bought for my granddaughter, but I believe this little one would appreciate it even more." Don Javier is surprised but nods respectfully. "Of course, ma'am. It will be a pleasure." The elderly woman smiles and, with Manuel's help, leaves the restaurant to fetch the toy. When she returns, Lucia is next to Elena, looking at the bowl of soup she's about to eat. The elderly woman approaches, handing the toy, a doll dressed in a bright blue dress, to Lucia, who looks at the gift with wide eyes of surprise and gratitude. "This is for you, dear," the elderly woman says, stroking Lucia's face. "I hope it brings you lots of joy." Lucia holds the doll with both hands as if it were the most precious treasure she had ever received. "Thank you, ma'am," she whispers, her eyes shining with emotion. The scene deeply touches the other customers in the restaurant. One by one, they begin to approach, offering small gestures of kindness. One customer leaves an extra tip on the table, whispering to Elena, "Let this help the little one." Another customer leaves a bag of clothes at the entrance, asking for it to be given to Manuel and Lucia. Don Javier, who observes everything from his place at the counter, feels a strange warmth in his chest. The transformation happening in his restaurant is something he had never witnessed before. The solidarity of the customers, the change in attitude towards Manuel and Lucia, all of it is altering the atmosphere of the place in a way he had never imagined. Elena notices Don Javier's thoughtful gaze and approaches him. "Sir, it seems like things are changing," she says softly. Don Javier nods, still looking at the customers who now seem more united, closer to each other. "Yes, Elena," he replies, his voice carrying a touch of admiration, "maybe kindness really is contagious." Manuel looks around, seeing the donations and the customers' smiles, and feels tears welling up in his eyes again. For the first time in a long while, he feels that he is not alone. Little Lucia, still holding the doll, runs to him and hugs him tightly. "We're okay, Grandpa," she whispers, and Manuel knows that finally, they are finding a place where they can start over. In the days that followed, the miracle of solidarity, the restaurant El Paraíso began to transform into a symbol of compassion in the small town. Manuel continued to work tirelessly, and his presence was accepted by many of the customers who had previously viewed him with suspicion. Lucia, with her new doll always by her side, became a beloved figure in the restaurant, captivating everyone's hearts with her shy smile. Don Javier, however, was still undecided. He watched from a distance, seeing how Manuel and Lucia became part of the restaurant's life, but still felt the weight of responsibility. Giving them a permanent chance would mean risking the success and reputation of El Paraíso. What if things didn't work out? One morning, while Don Javier was reviewing the accounting books in his office, Elena knocks softly on the door. "Sir," she says, entering timidly, "I'd like to talk to you about Manuel." Don Javier looks at her, his eyes still full of concern. "Yes, Elena, what do you want to discuss?" Elena approaches, sitting in a chair in front of Don Javier's desk. "I know you have your doubts, sir, but I believe Manuel has already proven his worth. He works hard, doesn't complain, and does everything we ask. And not only that, he's brought something to this place that we didn't have before, a sense of community, of purpose." Don Javier sighs, closing the books and folding his hands on the desk. "I see that, Elena, but giving him a permanent job is a big decision. I don't want to risk everything we've built here. What if he can't keep up the pace? What if the customers start complaining again?" Elena leans forward, her gaze serious. "Sir, I know you're a businessman and understand the risks, but sometimes we need to make decisions with our hearts, not just our heads. Manuel and Lucia have brought more than just work to this place, they've brought a new life, a new energy. The customers are already seeing that, and I believe if we give them a real chance, we'll see more benefits than anything negative." Don Javier is silent for a moment, pondering Elena's words. He knows she's right, things have indeed improved since Manuel and Lucia arrived. The customers are more engaged, the restaurant is more lively, warmer even. He, who had always prided himself on his rigid and professional demeanor, felt that something inside him had changed. Finally, he stands up, walking to the window and looking out at the busy street. "You're right, Elena. Maybe it's time to do something different. I'll talk to Manuel." Elena smiles, feeling a wave of relief. "Thank you, sir. I know this means a lot to them." Later that same day, Don Javier calls Manuel to his office. Manuel enters, nervous, unsure of what to expect. He had worked hard but knew his stay there was still uncertain. "Manuel," Don Javier begins, his voice calm but firm, "I've been observing you these past few days. I see that you're a dedicated man who isn't afraid of working hard. I also see that you've brought something valuable to my restaurant." Manuel looks at him, trying to decipher the tone of his voice. "Sir, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I've been doing my best to prove that I can be useful here." Don Javier nods, turning back to Manuel. "And you have proven that. That's why I've decided to offer you a permanent position here at El Paraíso. I want you and Lucia to stay. We'll make sure you have a safe place to live and food on the table every day." Manuel feels the ground shift beneath him for a moment. Don Javier's words echo in his mind like a dream. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. This means everything to us." His hands tremble with emotion, and he struggles to hold back the tears that are welling up in his eyes. Don Javier smiles slightly, a rare but genuine smile. "Thank you, Manuel. Keep doing what you're doing, and I know everything will be fine. We'll make this work together." Manuel can no longer hold back the tears. He reaches out his hand to Don Javier, who shakes it firmly. "Thank you, sir. Truly, thank you." Don Javier nods again before returning to his professional tone. "Now, get back to work. We still have a long day ahead." Manuel leaves the office with a light heart, feeling as if a huge weight has been lifted from his shoulders. He walks back to the dining area where Elena is waiting anxiously. Seeing the smile on his face, she immediately knows the news. "We did it," Manuel whispers, unable to contain his joy. "He gave us a real chance." Elena hugs Manuel, sharing in his happiness. "I knew he would do the right thing. Now, just keep showing how much you deserve to be here." At that moment, Lucia runs to Manuel, holding his hand tightly. "Grandpa, is everything going to be okay now?" Manuel looks at his granddaughter, his heart overflowing with love and relief. "Yes, my dear. Now, everything will be okay." As the days went by, Manuel integrated more into the restaurant's routine. His hard work and dedication began to be noticed by everyone, not just Don Javier and Elena but also by the regular customers. Lucia's presence at the restaurant was also seen as a blessing. Her innocence and joy brought a new energy to the place, making El Paraíso an even more welcoming spot. Manuel woke up early every morning, well before dawn, to ensure everything was ready for the day ahead. He helped set up the tables, prepared the utensils, and when the first customers arrived, he was already at his post, ready to serve with a smile on his face. Lucia, meanwhile, spent her mornings drawing in her designated corner, always lovingly watched over by Elena. Customers who had once looked at Manuel with suspicion began to greet him with nods and smiles, recognizing the value of the work he was doing. Don Javier, observing this change in attitude, felt more confident in his decision to keep Manuel at the restaurant. One morning, while Manuel was busily cleaning the tables after breakfast, a regular customer, Señor Rodriguez, an elderly man with a generally reserved temperament, approached him. "Good morning, Manuel," Señor Rodriguez said, his voice gentle but firm. Manuel stopped what he was doing and smiled. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" Señor Rodriguez looked at Manuel with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "I've been watching you, Manuel. You're a dedicated worker, and I want you to know that I appreciate the effort you're putting in here." Manuel was surprised by the unexpected compliment. "Thank you, sir. I just want to do my best to repay the opportunity that was given to me." Señor Rodriguez nodded, seeming satisfied with the response. "You're doing a good job. Keep it up, and soon you'll see that people here will start to see you as part of the family." These words touched Manuel deeply. He knew that although he was doing his best, there was still a long way to go to truly feel part of the community. But hearing that from a respected customer like Señor Rodriguez was a sign that he was on the right path. That same day, while Manuel was helping in the kitchen, Elena approached him with a smile on her face. "You're doing very well, Manuel," she said. "Even Don Javier commented on how things have improved since you started working here." Manuel smiled, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. "I'm glad to hear that, Elena. I really want to be part of this place, not just for the work but because I feel that this could be our home." Elena nodded, understanding the sentiment behind Manuel's words. "And it is, Manuel. You and Lucia are part of the family now. Everyone here sees that." Lucia, who was playing in the back of the kitchen, ran up to Manuel and Elena with one of her drawings in hand. "Look, Grandpa. I drew us at the park." Manuel took the drawing, and his heart swelled with emotion. "It's beautiful, my dear. One day, We'll go to the park for a real picnic, okay? Lucia smiled, and Elena couldn't help but be moved, seeing the happiness in the girl's eyes. It was as if, little by little, all traces of fear and insecurity were fading away, making room for the childhood joy she should always have. But as Manuel and Lucia settled into their new routine, there were still challenges to overcome. Some longtime customers of the restaurant were still resistant to Manuel and his granddaughter's presence. They avoided speaking to him directly and occasionally made unpleasant comments, reminding him that despite the progress, not everyone was ready to fully accept them. One afternoon, while the restaurant was particularly busy, Manuel heard one of these comments. A younger customer, apparently annoyed by Lucia playing in the kitchen, murmured to his companion, "Is this turning into an orphanage now?" It was supposed to be a classy restaurant, not a shelter. Manuel felt a tightness in his chest upon hearing this, but before he could respond, Elena intervened. "Here, we believe in helping those in need. Lucia is part of our family now, just like Manuel. If that's a problem, maybe it's best to reconsider where you want to dine." The young customer turned red with embarrassment, mumbled something unintelligible, and returned his attention to his meal. Manuel looked at Elena with gratitude but also with renewed concern. He knew that despite all the progress, he would still need to prove his worth repeatedly. But looking at Lucia happily playing and unaware of these issues, Manuel knew it was all worth it. He was determined to build a better future for her, no matter how many times he had to face disapproving looks and comments. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. During this time, Manuel established himself as a constant figure at the El Paraíso restaurant. His dedicated work and always positive attitude earned the respect of everyone. Lucia's presence continued to bring joy to the environment, and her bond with Elena and the other staff members grew stronger each day. Don Javier, who had once been cautious about Manuel, now saw him as an essential part of his team. The owner's once rigid demeanor had softened considerably over the months. He began to appreciate what Manuel brought to the restaurant, not just in terms of work but also in terms of humanity and community. One day, while the restaurant was quieter after lunch, Don Javier called Manuel into his office. Manuel, always respectful, entered the small room with the feeling that each conversation with Don Javier could be a test, but this time, there was something different in the owner's expression. "Manuel," Don Javier began as he sat behind his desk, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened since you and Lucia arrived here. I want you to know that over this time, you've proven your worth in ways I didn't expect." Manuel felt a wave of gratitude and relief but stayed silent, waiting for Don Javier to continue. "I've noticed how the customers have come to respect you and how you've undoubtedly changed the atmosphere of this place. I think it's time to think about your future here, not just as a temporary worker but as part of the family of this restaurant," Don Javier said with a seriousness that captured the weight of his words. Manuel could barely believe what he was hearing. "Sir, I don't know how to express my gratitude. I just want to continue doing my best to repay everything you've done for me and Lucia." Don Javier smiled faintly, a rare but sincere gesture. "I want you to stay here, Manuel, but in a more stable position. I've been thinking of offering you a formal employment contract with a proper salary and, more importantly, a place for you and Lucia to live permanently. I know you've been staying in the back of the restaurant, but that's just a temporary solution. I want you to have a real home." Manuel was silent for a moment, absorbing what he had just heard. Tears of emotion filled his eyes. A real home, he repeated, his voice choked. Sir, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I promise I will continue to give my best every day. Don Javier nodded, satisfied with the response. I know you will, Manuel. And I also want you to know that everyone here, Elena, the other staff, and even the customers, already see you and Lucia as part of the family. This restaurant wouldn't be the same without you. Manuel felt a wave of emotions flood over him. For so long, he and Lucia had lived in uncertainty, not knowing where they would find their next refuge. But now, they finally had something that seemed unattainable: stability, security, and above all, a home. Thank you, sir, Manuel said, tears silently streaming down his face. Really, thank you for everything. Don Javier stood up and extended his hand to Manuel, who shook it firmly. You deserve it, Manuel. Now go and share this news with Lucia. I'm sure she'll be thrilled. Manuel left the office with a light heart, almost not believing the change that had come to his life. He found Lucia in the corner where she always played with her drawings and knelt beside her. Lucia, he began with a smile that lit up his face, I have some great news for you. Lucia looked up at him, curious. What is it, Grandpa? Manuel took Lucia's small hands in his and said softly, We're going to have a real home, dear. A place just for us where we can live without fear and without worrying about tomorrow. Lucia's eyes widened in surprise, and then a radiant smile spread across her face. Really, Grandpa? We're going to have a house of our own. Manuel nodded, his voice choked with emotion. Yes, my love. A home where we can stay together, safe and happy. Lucia hugged Manuel tightly, and he felt all the weight of the hardships they had faced dissolve in that moment. Finally, everything was beginning to fall into place. They had found a place where they belonged, a place where they could start over and build a new life together. As he held Lucia in his arms, Manuel looked around the restaurant, feeling a deep gratitude for everything they had achieved. The sun shone brightly that morning, illuminating Manuel and Lucia's new home with a golden light that seemed like a sign of renewed hope. It was a simple but cozy house with a small garden in front and a porch where they could sit and enjoy peaceful afternoons. For Manuel, who had long dreamed of a place where he could offer security to his granddaughter, this moment was the fulfillment of a dream. Lucia ran through the garden, laughing joyfully as she explored every corner of the new home. For her, everything there was new and exciting: the blooming flowers, the trees that offered shade, and, especially, the feeling of having a place she could finally call home. Manuel watched her with a smile on his face, feeling his heart warm as he saw her so happy. That same day, Don Javier and Elena showed up at the house to help Manuel and Lucia settle in. Elena brought a basket of fresh fruit and a plant in a beautiful pot, a symbol of growth and new life. Don Javier carried a small toolbox, ready to help with anything that needed adjusting or fixing in the house. It looks like you two have settled in well, said Elena, smiling as she watched Lucia run through the garden. Yes, Manuel replied, looking around with gratitude. I can't believe we finally have a place like this. You two have been amazing, Elena. I can never repay what you've done for us. Elena shook her head, still smiling. You've already repaid us, Manuel. What you brought to the restaurant, what you and Lucia mean to all of us, is more valuable than any material thing. You brought love and unity, and that is priceless." Don Javier, who had been fixing some things in the kitchen, walked into the living room and overheard the conversation. "It's true, Manuel. When you arrived at the restaurant, I had no idea how much it would change all of us. You brought something that was missing in that place, a sense of community, of purpose." Manuel nodded, moved by Don Javier's words. "It was what you gave us that made this possible. The chance you gave me changed our lives, and for that, I will be forever grateful." Lucia ran up to Manuel, tugging at his hand. "Grandpa, come see. We have a tree in the garden, can we make a swing on it?" Manuel laughed, letting himself be swept up by Lucia's joy. "Of course, dear. We can definitely make a swing." Don Javier looked at the tree Lucia was pointing to and smiled. "You know, Manuel, I think I have some boards and ropes that could work for that. Let's make that swing today, together." Manuel, Don Javier, and Elena worked to build the swing on the tree while Lucia watched with eyes shining with excitement. The work was quick, and soon the swing was ready. Lucia was the first to use it, laughing and swinging back and forth, feeling the wind on her face. As he watched Lucia play, Manuel felt a deep peace settle over him. Everything he had fought for, all the challenges he had faced, had finally paid off. He had found a home, a safe place for Lucia, and friends who had become a true family for them. "Elena, Don Javier," Manuel said, turning to them, "you have no idea what this means to us. I don't know what would have happened if it weren't for you." Elena smiled and placed her hand on Manuel's shoulder. "You'll always have us, Manuel. We're family now, and we'll keep looking out for each other, no matter what happens." Don Javier nodded in agreement. "You found a home here, Manuel, and there will always be a place for both of you at El Paraíso. This is just the beginning of a new life for you." The sun began to set on the horizon, casting shades of orange and pink across the sky. Lucia kept swinging, laughing and calling for Manuel to push her higher. Manuel smiled, feeling the warmth of love and happiness around him. He joined his granddaughter, pushing the swing while she laughed and shouted with joy. Elena and Don Javier watched, satisfied and moved, as they saw how Manuel and Lucia's lives had improved. And so, as the day turned into night, Manuel and Lucia finally found the peace and security they had longed for. They had overcome hardships, built new friendships, and, most importantly, found a home where they could start anew. The restaurant El Paraíso would continue to be a special place for them, a symbol of hope, love, and second chances. Manuel knew that the journey would continue, but for the first time in a long while, he was ready to face the future with confidence and gratitude. After all, he knew that with the support of his new family, he and Lucia could overcome any challenge life might bring. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Share with your friends and check out the next video appearing on the screen, you'll love it. Remember, every act of kindness, no matter how small, can change the world. Let's keep spreading that love, folks. Peace out.